All right, I think we are live. I'm going to makes it easier to see me. Make sure I'm coming through the right microphone here. It looks like I'm not. Chris, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
We're good there. Is that tapping?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And we'll let some people start to join. Looks like it is working on Instagram. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I keep
I'm
that.
get on Instagram right now to log or watch the comments on here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have it open over here as well. Doesn't look like we have anybody just yet, which is fine. I always realize when we start these that I have like a bunch of different screens open. I want to keep it more simple. Looks like we have some people starting to join on Instagram, and then I'll double check and make sure that we are streaming over on Facebook as well real fast. Looks like it is working there. Awesome. Glad to see that. Chris, you're in Georgia now.
I am.
How's it going over there?
It's good. It's like I'm really quickly seeing that the landscape for claims in Georgia is a whole lot different than the landscape for claims in California, which is something to be expected. Each state has such different rules and different laws and things like that, and that's something that as Tugboat, as a nationwide service, it's really interesting to like see the differences in different states. It's almost like a whole different ball game, a whole different territory in every state. So
yeah, I'm gonna switch this to portrait. Oh, okay. It doesn't let us change the orientation once we're live. All right, I'm just gonna keep us this way then. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, one of the things that we've seen with this wildfire event is that we've seen adjusters that we're familiar with in claims outside of California coming to handle claims in California.
yeah,
Right. And we know because we got started in claims in Houston, Texas, after never having run claims before, then would come back and run them in California after learning how to do them in Texas. And California was different than Texas, right? And then you go and work a hurricane in Florida, and the policies, the insurance companies, the homeowners, the construction standards, everything is different there. Mm-hmm. And so maybe something good for people to be aware of is how much where you live affects how your claim can go. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to representation and advocacy, right? So you're in Georgia now. Part of what you're referencing when you say the landscape for claims is so different here is advocacy is really difficult in Georgia, right? Yeah. So attorneys have a really hard time representing homeowners and policyholders, and public adjusters have a really hard time advocating for people because the regulations, the laws that have been put in place kind of hamstring those individuals more than in other states. So, and the way that your adjuster, if you have a wildfire claim right now, there's a good chance you still have an adjuster that's coming from out of state. The way that they manage your claim very well may be affected by the types of claims that they're more familiar with. Very well may be the first wildfire claim that they've ever run.
Yeah, it's almost certainly going to affect how they run the claim, where the people are coming from, or what even the most recent experience that they've had is, because that's on their mind from before.
Yeah,
we're seeing that across the board. Is just like people. There's very specific things that are California Insurance Code specific, and California Fair Claims Practices specific. And when a lot of adjusters come out here, we see that they're not adhering to the R codes and not adhering to the fair claims practices, and are doing things that are just completely just out of left field. And that a lot of that seems to be because of where they're coming from, like right before.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have a couple things I'm going to dive into, Chris. If you have any topics you want to, I didn't pull out any questions from users. Most questions that we get from users throughout the week, we're able to answer really quickly within the Tugboat app. And I didn't have any that were particularly relevant that we got in our messages and stuff this week, but I have some topics that I do want to talk about. some visuals and stuff as well.
I want to mention really quick that is time specific that I don't want to forget to mention on here is that, right, it seems to be that this is the last several days that California Fair Plans people can file a claim.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point. Actually, Chris, why don't you find a link that talks about the date of containment for each fire? That's going to be an important note. Yeah, I had forgotten about that a little bit. So really good to remember that. So
it is January 31st.
Okay.
Eaton Fire, January 31st.
Okay. So what Chris is talking about here is that there is very specific language in the California Fair Plan policies. Sorry, let me turn my light on here because it's a little bit dark in here. Ooh, now it's a little bit bright in here. There is very specific language in California Fair Plan's policies that say when you are allowed to file a wildfire smoke claim, right? Not a wildfire direct fire damage claim, not a wind claim or anything like that, but specifically if you're filing a claim for smoke damage from a wildfire, it's 45 days from the date that the wildfire was contained. So though these fires started on January 5th or 6th, I believe it was, they were not technically fully contained until January 31st. So Chris's point is that if you have been affected by the fire debris, the smoke from this wildfire, and have been wondering, should I file a claim? Should I not file a claim? And have been waiting, it is just about your last chance to do so over the next couple of days. Do you know what the last date is, Chris?
The last, let's see. Give me one second.
Oh, let me switch my camera to the other one as well. All right, awesome.
We have 5 more days. So then the last date is 16th or 17th.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly of the date. And it makes sense. It really does make sense why they've put that into place, because there were people that were canvassing to file, like for attorneys and public adjusters that were canvassing people like a year smoke claim.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know that like after a hailstorm, roofers can come in for a year and look at roofs and help people potentially file claims.
I've seen it in policies as well, like not California Fair Plans, but like other policies as well that limit hail damage to 180 days and things like that.
Yeah. And so they essentially are trying to incentivize people to file their claims more quickly, which is, I think, the correct thing to do generally. I think 45 days may be a little bit quickly, but if your house was heavily affected by smoke, you should know it by then. You should file claims. I don't like restrictive policy language that hurts policyholders, but if you have been affected that way, you should know it. You should file that claim. Real fast, Aaron saying he's not seeing the live on Facebook. It is there. Let me just go ahead and share it in case people aren't seeing it. Let me see, we're live now. All right, Aaron, I'm going to pull you into here as well.
On Facebook, you have to, I do see it on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, you're here now. It is on there on Facebook. Aaron, you may have had to be in the event, so I just shared the event again. So yeah, we were just talking about how if you were affected by the wildfires and for some reason you haven't filed your claim yet, maybe your house was primarily smoke damage, maybe you were thinking about paying for things out of pocket and you have Fair Plan, it's just about the last chance for you to file that claim because of their timelines. So I'm gonna pull up a visual here. I use this in a post that I did on LinkedIn this week about these smoke affected homes. And I think it was kind of powerful as I went to go and I wanted to write a little bit about this. There's been a lot of talk on LinkedIn and on other platforms with carrier advocates, people that work for the carrier, adjusters on that side, diminishing the destruction that's been caused to homes that aren't burned down. Talking about them like they are the same as a house that was affected or a business that was affected by COVID-19. So if you were plugged into insurance claims at all, you might know that after COVID-19 in 2020, 2021, when businesses were shut down, they tried to file claims saying that their businesses experienced direct physical loss from COVID, the virus being present within their stores, their restaurants, their businesses, and that virus caused direct physical loss to that business and therefore was covered. And by and large, those claims were denied up to the Supreme Court. Because it's just not considered direct physical loss, even if the surfaces might have needed to be cleaned, right? There's been recent legal decisions that were made that equated a certain specific smoke loss to that type of loss like it was from COVID-19. And so that decision emboldened a lot of people on the carrier side to I don't know what the best way to phrase it, but to be much more
Blasé.
yeah, and just generous. I hate using the word generous when in insurance claims because they're required to pay you things. They're obligated to pay you. It's not generosity that they're paying you out of, but they're being much more restrictive on their and how they're talking about damage because they're emboldened by this legal case that was a very weak smoke claim, likely one that was very far from a fire. It was filed by an attorney. It sounds like that, and it was covered and it was paid, and they were mad that they weren't paid enough. It was not a strong case to use, but anyways, it is emboldened carrier advocates, carrier representatives, and adjusters, and how they talk about the smoke damage claims. So I'm going to make sure we have the right link here real fast. Linktree needs to be updated. That's what Rachel was sharing. So I'm going to update a link real fast before I post or I show you guys this video, but I'm going to show you a video in a second here that is the county map showing the houses that are still standing and houses that are burnt down and partially damaged.
I think didn't the commissioner come out with a thing stating, was it the commissioner's office? I don't want to give wrong information, but there was I think it was the commissioner's office came out with a statement about that specific decision telling carriers that this does not mean that you can't cover smoke damage.
Yeah, but I mean, like a lot of the other notices that have come out from the Department of Insurance, that one seems to lack some teeth. Aaron, I think I fixed that link. You can have it tested again.
Please, insurance companies don't.
Yeah, it lacked some teeth, and I mean, the insurance Department of Insurance only has so much teeth in how it can enforce some of these things. Yeah. Danielle, let me know if you want me to pull you into the video. So what I posted about here, I made this video just walking through or scrolling through the Eaton fire, and this isn't even all of the Eaton fire. This is just a section of it. Every house that is marked black on this is listed on the county website as not affected. And every house that's marked green is listed as 1 to 9% affected. So very little burn on it. And so I can pause at just about any moment on this video and you can see that I don't know if you can see my mouse right here, but like mid left of that, there are black houses, green houses, completely surrounded by red houses, and red are houses that completely burned down to the ground, total losses, as they say. And so when we're talking about smoke losses at Tugboat, when we've talked about them a lot during these office hours over the last few weeks, these are the smoke losses that we're talking about, right? Primarily if the Tugboat users that we have, the public adjusting clients that Waypoint is working with, they're all in an area, in this specific area or in one just like it in Pacific Palisades, right? We're not talking about houses a mile away or half a mile away or even a quarter mile away. We're talking about houses within this map area. And so I'll press play on it again. I think it's important for anybody that watches this to understand, if you're not one of these houses and you don't quite understand how serious this is for some of these homeowners, this should be a good description. All the red houses are burned to the ground. Black and green ones and yellow ones are black and green ones specifically. They're essentially listing as like these ones are undamaged. And this is important because if you, I'm going to pause this again, live in one of these black labeled black, labeled green houses, there's a very good chance, because we have seen it, that your insurance company, if they're not already trying to get you to move back in, they're indicating that they're going to try to get you to move back into the house as soon as possible. This isn't every insurance company, but it's certainly a lot of them, certainly a lot of the users, where their insurance company is essentially saying it should take just a couple of weeks to clean your house, and then you should be able to move back in. And some of them then will say, well, we'll wait until there's potable water and electricity, and then you can move back in, right? But Chris, talk for a moment as to why would someone in one of these houses listed black, if there was potable water, if there was electricity, right? Even if they could get their house cleaned by a mitigation company, why would it still be a legitimate argument for them to make that they should not yet be moving back into their house?
Well, one would be air quality. No matter what happens to the cleaning of the house and how good your air filtration system is in the house, you don't have a HEPA filter on your house, and there's properties all around you in every direction getting demolished, and that stuff is getting kicked back up into the air. And not only the stuff that is from the burn, but even the soil beneath there, like even in construction sites, it's just like fungus and stuff that's in the soil. So there's so much stuff being tossed up in the air. That's one major reason. And what the carrier is expected to do is to get you back into something that is your average standard of living or your normal standard of living. And that is just simply not your normal standard of living. It's hard because the commissioner has said that if you can come up with some other things to do to help, like put a generator there and get water in there, that is good, but that doesn't alleviate a lot of the other stressors that are present. I think I'm missing something. There's a couple, we've had this conversation recently, and there's a couple other issues that are very specific that have been brought up.
Well, I mean, I think that the most basic one that you can talk, those are ones are maybe the most basic, but a pretty straightforward one is that the city has outlined what are the different phases of debris removal that have to happen, right? Phase one was hazardous materials they could pick up with their hands and put into trash bags, which was like paint and chemicals and things like that. Phase two is that they've essentially acknowledged that all of the debris that's on your property is hazardous, and which means full PPE, full respirated masks if you're handling it, and that phase two debris, that's phase two, is pulling all that out plus 6 inches of the dirt of the debris removal, and that phase two likely is going to take the rest of the year to finish up within all these neighborhoods. You may get your next door neighbor's house might get done, but then the neighbor across the street might not yet get done because the Army Corps hasn't gotten there, or the private contractor, whoever it is. Yeah, someone on Instagram just said the risks outweigh the need to return home. 100%. And that the challenge is, again, I say this as someone that used to be an adjuster for the insurance companies. You don't think of things as an adjuster as how risky is it for this person, right? That's not the question that we're ever taught to ask, that we're being asked to consider as an insurance adjuster. Instead, the question is just, is this covered, right? And the adjuster isn't typically just going back to the policy and figuring it out or listening to the Department of Insurance. It's what was the guidelines given to me? What am I allowed to say is covered and not covered for this specific storm, right? But like the person just said on Instagram, the risks outweigh the need to return home. It is incredibly risky to go and live in that area, right? I'll pull it up one more time. We'll watch the video once more in case anyone wasn't here yet. But I was scrolling through This is a screenshot scrolling through the Eaton Fire area. This is not the whole area. This is just a section of it. And every house marked black or green, composite at any point, and you can see that there are houses marked black or green. Those are 0% affected up to 9% affected. Black is not affected at all, is what the city said, which means when they came by, the whole house was still standing. They didn't find direct fire damage on it. Green means they may have found, a detached garage that was burned, fences that were burned, and things like that. But generally, the house is okay. And again, these black labeled houses are the ones that are being labeled as smoke damage. And I already know. Chris, I just talked to the Serve Pro that we're well connected to.
Yeah.
I don't want to say which one or specifically who it was. It was a Serve Pro who was starting to get back the letters for the estimates that they were sending into California Fair Plan for decontaminating these houses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just getting a bunch of denial letters.
Just straight denial.
Straight denial. Daniel, I'm not sure what the orange. It essentially goes up in how much they're affected up until total loss. Red is total loss. I just know that I only mentioned black and green there because those are the relevant ones.
So many.
No one's saying a half burned down home is smoke affected, but it's all these ones that we're aware of. How many clients do we have that they would just say like, oh yeah, it's just smoke. And it's just like, this isn't just smoke. Their house was surrounded by fire and hazardous, toxic smoke. And that is now.
Sorry. No, go ahead. The hard part is that these claims are more complicated. We're seeing this across the board, more complicated than the total loss claims.
Yeah.
And yet the carrier is treating it like nothing happened. And they're like, to the point where we had carrier tell people like, hey, we don't need to help you right now. People died in this fire. You're not that bad.
We literally have a Tugboat user showed us an email where their adjuster, this was earlier, like sooner after the fire, but when they were asking some questions about getting in advance because they couldn't get back to their house, the adjuster was like, you're being too needy. We have people that have died from this wildfire. And that kind of, I don't know, push them aside, shrug it off attitude has maintained. It's not gotten any better. It's getting worse, especially because now once you go there, right, these houses that are still standing compared to all the rubble that's next to it, like when you put those next to each other, and what you end up doing is comparing those two things rather than seeing how do these two things relate, right? How does this house that's burnt down next to this one relate to the house that's still standing? It's just like, oh, well, at least it's still standing. And those people often are really grateful and just like, yeah, I'm super lucky. My house is still standing. And they are, but this is all to say, this is what I wrote about on LinkedIn this week, was a post showing that video that I just scrolled through and saying that we need to stop diminishing smoke losses as we're talking about them right now. Because right now, most of the ones that we're talking about are those houses. There are hundreds and thousands of claims like that are in that situation. And those claims, like the vast majority of them are not going super well for people generally, right? Because they have fair plan or just because they have an adjuster that's not taking it seriously. And I don't say that about most, I don't usually say like the vast majority of claims are handled poorly. The vast majority of these smoke claims that we've seen are being handled really poorly.
Very poorly. And what's happening now is that we're at the phase of the process where people have got their initial estimates back from their insurance company. And a lot of people that had like not wanted help early on or thought that it was not going to be a big deal are coming and calling us and being like, hey, it's really weird. Serve Pro sent me an estimate for $20,000 to clean my 1,200 square foot house. Is that normal? And so what's going to happen, what seems to be happening right now is that everyone who just kind of thought that they were going to get treated well by the insurance company is kind of getting the real deal right now. They're starting to understand like, oh, wow, this is a serious situation. I can't just trust that somebody is going to hand me a solution. I need to go out and do something about it. And that's like the biggest thing that, at least this week, from what I've seen this week, that I really want to impress on people is that right about now is the critical time that you have to start doing something to help yourself in the situation. because you've probably maxed out the whatever is available for you from the carrier to get help or from your contractor to get help, and so now's the time to start really getting educated about the process.
Yeah, right now is when we're starting to hear back from people. Sorry, I was just sharing this on my Instagram story to make sure people can click on it there. Right now is when we're starting to hear back from people that a lot of them are Tugboat users that are like, hey, I think things are going to go fine, but I would love some support as I'm walking through it. Just answer some questions, give me some guidance. I'm just going to wait to see what the insurance company gives me. And they're getting those first estimates back. I mean, we had people that were expecting to receive estimates in the several $100,000 range that got, I mean, the estimate that we showed last week that we went over was one of those. And that homeowner got one back that was at 33,000, right? And based off of their first walkthrough with their adjuster, based off of everything that was said and how affected his home is by all the houses that burned down literally all around him, he was expecting a vast amount of drywall that would probably have to come out. He has unfinished wood that likely has affected insulation all over the place, electrical that might have been heat affected, all these different things. And it was an estimate written as if a cleaning company was going to come and wipe everything down. Right. And so all that to say is right now, 2 months after these fires have happened is when these are starting to roll in and we're starting to get those messages. Someone said on Instagram, the black is such a misnomer when it comes to those houses. We still had exterior damage from the house burning next to us and severe smoke damage inside. So that was one of the houses listed black right there, and would still be listed as a smoke damage claim to their insurance company. So I hope you're a Tugboat user already. I can't tell by the handle that you have if you are or not, but if you are not, Tugboat's free for anyone affected by the wildfires. Please go ahead and make an account there. A quick review, Chris, before we go through any of the stuff that you any topics you had as well. Last week we went through this. I realized I didn't post the whole live from last week as on or like reposted onto Instagram. So I'm going to do that later today or tomorrow. But we went through this estimate and talked through why it's so insufficient. This is an estimate that a homeowner received back from their insurance company after their first inspection. This one's from AAA. Very standard. And we looked through using Xactimate if this estimate had been written to industry standards, what it would look like. And it was essentially 3 times the amount that was here. So if you're interested in why that is, I'll post the live that we did last week and you can scroll through and see how we talked through that as well. Let me come back to us here. Anyways, Chris oversees Waypoint Adjusting. He's the general manager over there, which is Tugboat's public adjusting subsidiary. Mostly we operate in California. So we happen to be operating a lot with these wildfire claims, though we have several hundred people using Tugboat, which is amazing. We still have several dozen that are using Waypoint as well, because their losses were complex enough or they just wanted that extra level of support. And so, Chris, can you talk a little bit about the challenge that you and the team at Waypoint are seeing as you guys, as claim experts, right? You've worked for these insurance companies. Danielle, you've been a public adjuster for a decade advocating for homeowners, right? What has it been like 2 months into these wildfires? Are there any unique challenges? Are we seeing anything different from kind of your standard claim that we're representing people for? What are some of the experiences that you guys are seeing right now?
I'll start. Danielle, if you want to add anything as well too. You have a lot of hands-on in this fire. I have more hands-on in the previous fire in Camarillo. And 2 months into the claim, one of the big things that we're seeing is that carriers are really starting to leverage, especially the people that have not done a lot of advocacy. Take it back a second. It seems like the carriers are noticing the people that don't know a lot and using that against them and being like, well, I have to end your ALE right now. Like, that's just what happens at this point. So already 2 months in, we have people that are getting threatened with their ALE being canceled or being told that, hey, I see that you have these 3 other estimates, but we have our carrier vendor estimate that is right here. Why don't you just use the carrier vendor? And the answer to that is that the carrier vendor is being incentivized to not actually do the actual scope of work necessary to clean a house, and therefore are charging 80% less. And so what's happening right now is that it seems like the carriers at this point are starting to try and like get these claims off their desk rather than continue to handle them. And the tactics that they're using are making people feel guilty for having a claim in the first place, making people feel like their situation is insignificant compared to others and things like that. Danielle, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, definitely. So we're starting to, like everyone's saying, insurance companies are finally starting to get the ball rolling as far as issuing payments, et cetera. But even, I'm a public adjuster representing clients. And for instance, I have a State Farm claim. Well, I have a few State Farm claims, but one of them in particular, we submitted a cleaning estimate from a cleaning company that's IICRC certified. And she informed me that they're agreeing to a good amount of it, but they're going to, delete a lot of stuff. And I went over it with her and asked her, okay, well, what are you deleting? What are you not agreeing to? We need that in writing. We need the denial on, why you're denying these items, blah, blah, blah. And I told her, I brought it up and I said, well, this company is IICRC certified, like this is the standard for the standard protocol for these smoke damage claims and the proper way to clean them. And she was like, what's the IICRC? And I was like, oh, okay. So you don't even know like what we're talking about here then. So at that point I was like, well, maybe it would be, a good idea to put us in touch with your manager because maybe they'll know what we're, discussing. If you don't even know what the IICRC is, then why are we having this conversation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just seems like inexperienced adjusters as well that are being put on these claims when the insurance companies know, what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Inexperienced adjusters or, I don't know, just ones with that have been given very biased information, maybe by the carrier, by their management, by the training materials that they were given from the storm. Again, Chris and I were the same way. When we would go to a storm, we would get the information from the carrier that was going to allow us to adjust the claims quickly and efficiently to their standards, right? I never, when preparing for a storm with a new insurance company, Chris, maybe you did, but I never reached out to them and said, hey, can I get a copy of all your various HO3 policies and any endorsements that might be included in those? Can I make sure to have those on hand for any of the claims that I'm going to be adjusting? Like never once asked for it.
Yeah, they would tell me no straight up. They would give me their guidelines and not give me the actual policy.
Yeah. So all that to say, like, if the bare minimum being we should know the policy that we're adjusting, and then the next standard is like, well, what are the industry standards that exist that allow us to adjust this claim properly, estimate for things if appropriately and accurately. If that's the next bit of it, like they haven't even gotten past the first one for a lot of adjusters, and this isn't all of them. There are many adjusters out there that know more than I do about policy, more than we do about restoration. They've been contractors before, but we do know that the insurance, the Department of Insurance in California gave out emergency licenses for this storm, which that is only relevant for people that have never adjusted before, right? It's like, that means that they knew that there were going to be adjusters that came in to work on this storm that had never worked a claim before ever. And then these were going to be their first ones. And so certainly some of our users have been, have had to suffer through some of that. I'm going to pull up a question that I typed in as Tugboat, but just so it can be on the screen here. I'm going to talk about this for a moment because it's something that a Tugboat user asked during a call we had with them. So with Tugboat, most of our support is online. There's a chat where you can connect with claims experts. We have automated reports that we give to you. It's this mix of AI and very hands-on, rather, claim support from our team. But to help you ultimately make empowered, more informed decisions as you're negotiating your own claim, as you're navigating the difficulties that come with an insurance claim. And so one of those conversations this week I was in on with a Tugboat user that wanted to talk about public adjusters. And so she had some questions. She wanted to talk with us about it. And so she essentially had this question: can your contractor act as your public adjuster? She actually didn't ask it that way. I'm presenting it this way. She had a contractor that offered to act as her public adjuster. Not going to say who this is or where it is or anything like that, or it was in Los Angeles. And so, and I'm getting this through the communication of a client. And so I don't know exactly how it was communicated. So that's part of the reason I'm going to be really careful about naming anything. But I think it's a good topic for us to talk about. And I know it's on some people's minds. And so when it comes to helping you to advocate for your claim, because you should always be advocating for your claim. I'm a strong believer in that, whether it's you, a public adjuster, if you have an attorney, and sometimes your contractor can help you advocate for a claim, but there should certainly be advocacy that's helping you to get to the best possible position that you can within your claim, within the coverage that you're afforded. And so the first thing I'll address is, can your contractor act as your advocate during a claim? And the answer is sometimes yes, right? There are appropriate times where your contractor can help to advocate for the estimate that they've written and submitted to your insurance company, because a lot of times your adjuster will want to talk to them. And sometimes your adjuster won't even talk to you, and they'll be like, well, I don't want to talk with you about your contractor's estimate. I want to talk to your contractor. So let's set up a call with them. And the adjuster will walk through the estimate, and the contractor can advocate as to why he can't match your kitchen cabinets, why they need to get replaced, right? Same thing for your roof. Why the tile needs to be replaced in your bathroom in order to get to the plumbing features that are behind it, whatever it might be. That's a form of advocacy that he's trying to make sure that you get all the repairs that you need, right? And I would say that is about where the line ends, that a contractor should be advocating for you and can advocate for you ethically.
There's a specific line. I mean, it's that as soon as it gets into anything regarding policy whatsoever.
Yeah. And this is a line that I know a lot of contractors straddle because they are smart. They do understand policy. They understand that how the policy is being interpreted affects the bill that they have, right? Is the adjuster including debris removal appropriately in it, right? Because if an adjuster doesn't, he may cap the estimate. And the contractor may have to go back and say, look, like there's this insured has extra coverage for debris removal that you didn't yet include, right? That's him talking about the policy. I'm not sure if that's me beeping there.
That was me. I need to
gotcha. So that's an example of a contractor talking about a policy that it can be a really challenging way for them to stay out of it, right? But I don't know if you want to call that a gray area, because a lot of times an adjuster will straight up ask or pull the contractor into that part of the conversation that includes policy. And I think contractors should be really careful there because they can, they can set themselves up for liability in ways that they don't want to have. But there are other times, and I think this may have been an example of it with the person I was talking to, where the contractor is actually offering to be an advocate that they shouldn't be, right? They're saying, I'm going to come in and I'll handle your entire claim for you. I'll talk to your adjuster. If they deny anything, I'll fight with them and try and make sure that it gets covered. I'll try and make sure that you get paid enough money. And here's the kicker. Here's when you know for sure that they have crossed an ethical line, is if they ask you to pay for that. And so I have heard of contractors saying that and saying, and if you want me to do all that for you, I'm going to include a little bit more in my estimate to account for that extra work that I'm going to do, essentially advocating for you. 100% that's doing public adjusting work. They're not licensed as public adjusters. You can't act as a contractor and a public adjuster on the same claim in California. I think there are some states that you can, but not in California. And so anyways, the simple answer is your contractor cannot act as your public adjuster, even if they can advocate for certain specific things. You guys have any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, not specifically, other than there are certain contractors that understand this very well, but there are very few of them that will toe the line in a way that is, ethical, and that will not come back to haunt you later. But
Yeah.
much more to say about it.
And I think the last thing I'll say on it too, in my experience, your contractor that likely knows a lot about construction, a lot about the codes and city codes and building code in the area that they're working, even if they think that they know a lot about your insurance policy, there's a very good chance that they don't understand it very thoroughly. Unless you have adjusted claims, unless you are maybe an attorney, unless you have dealt with these policies intricately and had these coverage conversations, and have a deep understanding of them, which just most contractors, not all, but most don't, then the way that they would be stepping in to advocate for you on the policy discussions can cause a lot more harm than good if they don't know what they're doing. And more importantly, ethically, legally, they're not allowed or supposed to do it. So anyways, that's all the notes I have about that one. I thought it was an important topic to touch on since some Tugboat users were asking about it just this week. I have a couple other notes, but Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover today?
I mean, not specifically. I mean, I've already talked about the few points that I had written down, which are the timeline, the date to file claims, as well as what this stage looks like for people that have not that are seeming like it's kind of like the end of their claim because the carrier is paid out and they've made their stance, and letting people know that it's not the end of your claim, it's not the end of your availability. I mean, we have one claim this year that started off as I think it was like around a $30,000 claim, and we're at about $400,000 on it right now. Like the carrier paid $30,000, and we found that it was owed over $400,000, and that's about where we're at on it right now. And so, just letting people know that just because the carrier says that you have reached your limit, that this is your estimate, this is what we are paying, you have your ALE is exhausted, whatever excuse they have given you, that does not mean it is the end all be all. There are ways to go about finding the actual money you need to get yourself back to where you were before the loss, which is almost like where you were before the loss is kind of a joke at this point. No one's going to get back to exactly where they were, but to get what's actually owed for you.
Yep.
Another thing I would say is that a lot of people don't understand that if they accept the current payment that's on the table, they think that that's going to be it, or that they're accepting that as like a full and final release. So as long as you're not signing anything stating that this is a full and final release, you're always able to go back and say, hey, well, you owe for this or this. So you can still supplement the claim even if you take the initial payment off the table.
Yeah. Really important point. When homeowners receive communications from their adjusters, it's almost always kind of a scary experience, right? There's this form language that's included in there. And that language often makes people feel like, oh my gosh, I just got what's called a settlement. They're calling it undisputed, which is this really weird phrase that if you're not in insurance sounds like that means like I'm not allowed to dispute it, right? Like that's the way that people interpret it. And so you'll get a letter from your insurance company that says, here's the settlement we've come up with. It's the undisputed amount. And it just scares people, right? And very understandably so, because they feel like, oh my gosh, I know this isn't enough. Now what do I do? Like, do I have to sue my insurance company? Like, is that the only route that I have to go at this point? And that actually leads into the next point I wanted to talk about is I've had several conversations with people over the last couple of weeks that have essentially asked what some people ask, like, what is the point of me trying to advocate for myself? Like, what authority do I have to get anywhere with my claim? Right. And then even beyond that, some people that are interested in a public adjuster and want to talk to us about, a lot of people will talk with Tugboat about public adjusters because they feel just safer asking that question because they know that on the Tugboat side of it, we're not trying to make them sign up with a public adjuster, right? We're happy with them advocating for themselves. So we get a lot of questions about public adjusters. And so some have asked, just this week, someone was asking, you know, I really feel like I'm going to need to escalate things with my claim, but I've talked to attorneys and they are going to charge somewhere between 30 and 40%. I've talked to public adjusters, and the ones he had talked to were going to charge somewhere in the range of 20 to 30%, which is still, I would say, generally pretty high on the public adjuster side for these claims. And his question was like, what's the point of a public adjuster? What authority do they have? Right? Like, I don't want to pay 30 to 40% for an attorney, but I'm already mad at my insurance company. I know that they haven't paid enough. I've given them all this evidence already. This person, he showed me all the documentation that he had sent to his carrier. And he's like, they have ignored it. They're not answering. I do not have time for this. So he was talking about, he's like, I want someone to handle this for me, or to have some assurance that if I keep trying, that I'll likely get somewhere. And what does a public adjuster even have to offer? So you guys have to talk with people about this all the time, right? If someone's interested in a public adjuster and you guys get a call, Chris, general manager of Waypoint, Danielle, one of the senior adjusters there, if someone is curious, like, what are they going to get out of, and don't even, and separate it even from just a public adjuster, right? Because yeah, a public adjuster isn't an attorney and a homeowner isn't an attorney themselves. Neither of us, public adjusters or the homeowner, have the authority to sue the insurance company. We might have some different roles, but like, what can someone get out of advocacy before suing their insurance company? Like, and why and how is advocating for yourself or having someone do it for you, whether it's a public adjuster or you doing it yourself, why is that even worth it?
Oh, like I do want to point out that, yeah, that there is, it's a very interesting place because public adjusters, we are licensed, but that doesn't make us have any certain authority besides that aside from the homeowner, we're the only other one allowed to talk about their claim with the insurance company, talk about the policy. The benefit to having a good public adjuster, not just a public adjuster, but a good public adjuster, a seasoned public adjuster, or one that's on a team of seasoned public adjusters, is that we have, I guess, like the schoolyard street knowledge of what's going on in the insurance industry, like the type of arguments and the type of conversations that work to persuade the insurance company to do what they're supposed to do. And I think most of it comes out of experience. Like, and every once in a while, there is an adjuster on the inside that will have some sort of fear, I guess it were, or not fully understanding what a public adjuster is there to do. I mean, I remember when I was an IA, I had no idea what a public adjuster was. Like, it was just like this vague, and I think most IAs feel this way. It's just kind of this vague thing of somebody on the other team. And so and a lot of them, it can just add another aspect of a feeling of a little bit of authority. And that's not for every adjuster, but for the most part, I would say it's just the experience of doing hundreds and hundreds of claims over and over again, that we know the vein that we can follow to get to the result that we want out of the claim.
Yeah. Daniel, have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Chris is right. Basically, you are leveling the playing field by hiring a PA, because, you know, the insurance company has their adjusters and you have every right to have an adjuster on your side as well. And even if you're advocating for yourself and you're not a public adjuster and you have no idea what an insurance claim entails, you have every right to advocate for yourself. A policy is a contractual obligation between you and your insurance company. And so you yourself could also hold them accountable if they're not doing something properly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Like, even if you feel helpless, you do have your rights, right? Within what the Department of Insurance has outlined, they have been pretty explicit at trying to help remind people, like, you have rights. And though it may feel like your insurance company is ignoring your rights or stepping on your rights or whatever it might be, you do have them, right? And so I think yeah, both your guys' points were amazing there. It's worth advocating or having someone advocate for you, especially if you know that there's a gap between what you're owed and what you've been paid. And worth trying it. I think generally worth trying it before hiring an attorney. Now, this isn't me giving any legal advice. You should, if you're interested in hiring an attorney, then talk to an attorney and see if they're interested in having you hire them, if they think you have a case. So many people will tell us, I want to sue my insurance company for bad faith. And we're not legal experts, but I can look at it pretty quickly and say, like, I don't think an attorney is going to see bad faith here the way that you would. Let me connect you with one. You can have a conversation with them and see. And I know from all the hundreds of conversations I've had with attorneys that their bar for bad faith is super high, right? Like the level of egregious behavior that they require an insurance company to have committed before they'll file a bad faith lawsuit is very high. At least the ones that we've talked and worked with in the past. And so all that to say, homeowners will feel like they're at that point where they like, all I have left to do is sue, when they're really early in the journey of just advocating for themselves. And as and it may feel like it's a bit like there's not a lot of teeth behind what you have to say sometimes, because again, you're not an attorney, you don't have any type of legal expertise or license behind you. But we know from experience, this is why we've kept doing Tugboat after years of trying it. The first user that ever used Tugboat took a letter that was a templated one that was made for their claim based off of a completely automated process that we had at the time that asked them some questions about their claim, told them to identify the things that they thought were missing. It gave them a letter they could send to their insurance company requesting that those things be reviewed. Those things it took them a few times reminding the adjuster and going back and forth, but eventually that letter got them $15,000 more. Like that was like the inception of Tugboat, of us trying it one time with someone that had a water loss. And all that to say, they didn't threaten to sue their insurance company. They never had to actually file a lawsuit against their insurance company. They never hired a public adjuster. They just advocated for themselves. They knew there was something that was owed to them, and they gave a good, logical, fact-based argument as to why they were owed that. And I think that is the difference a lot of times, because claims are such an emotional process for people, and very understandably so, right? Your home is burned down or it's flooded or whatever it might be. It's so emotional. And so people will respond emotionally oftentimes in a way, again, that is very understanding, or that I can understand, but is not as helpful as you might like it to be if you want to succeed in the claims. Because on the other side of your claim is a person, and if you just yell at them and get mad at them for not answering you, they're going to get defensive and give an excuse as to why they didn't answer you, and they're not apt to cover the next part. It doesn't mean that you have to play super cordial and really nice with your adjuster all the time, but it means that you want to be fact-based, persuasive, logical, in the arguments that you're making. So there's a video that I'm going to put out this week if I can. I wrote out the script for it, but I need to film it still. And it's outlining the type of questions that people should ask. And we've learned this from our experience, but it's usually not a why question. It's a what question. It's a who question. It's a how question. It's what can I provide to you to help you better understand the point that I'm trying to make, or the thing that I'm asking for. And your adjuster will often tell you, oh, I need another estimate from a contractor. Like, you telling me this isn't enough isn't good. Oh, okay, great. Let me go get an estimate from a contractor. Right. Who can I talk to about this housing? Oh, well, it's really not up to me. We have a vendor that is in charge of giving us the value for the housing. Would you mind if I talk to that vendor? Yeah, sure. Here's the number. You can talk to him. Right. Like, so working your way through that process of advocating for yourself almost always results in you getting more from it. Sometimes you hit a wall. Sometimes you need a public adjuster. And so the last thing I'll say is, I'll give you guys the opportunity to talk through, because I know some people that watch this are still interested in hiring a public adjuster. Some of them have been discouraged because they've talked to a lot of public adjusters, and public adjusters aren't even interested in their claims because they're too small or not complex enough, and whatever it might be, right? And so what is the difference between what a public adjuster is going to do and what a homeowner is going to do on a claim, right? What they can do on themselves, advocating for themselves.
Are you asking me to answer the question?
Yeah. Sorry, I was asking you.
The difference between what a public adjuster and a homeowner can do is it's not that there's a difference in what we can do. There's just in my opinion, a difference in how we go about doing it. We can do the same things. The problem is that the homeowner has a couple weeks of education. We have a couple hundred to a couple thousand claims of education. And so what we can do, and I mean, specifically speaking for myself and not just as just a public adjuster, like what I can do is I know how to talk to look for different personality traits in the adjusters and meet them where they're at and try and figure out the right way to approach it. The second thing that we can do is generally we get a little bit more respect from management as a public adjuster too. Like if we are escalating things, they tend to listen to it a little bit more. If we make threats, they know that there's a little bit more teeth to it, especially if it's a public adjuster that works. Someone yelling, they're laughing in the other room.
That's okay. They sound happy. They don't sound like they're in danger.
They're very happy in that room. It's a happy room. Yeah, a lot of the things that a public adjuster can do is, I got so distracted by the laughing.
You were saying they're taken more seriously essentially by management.
Yeah, it's just that another main thing that we can do, a big thing that I forgot about before, is that we understand the software and everything that the carrier is using. So when the adjuster says that we're not approving this line item in an estimate, we understand what that means. This line item and estimate is not just that line you're looking at, but there's a software that describes in a paragraph what that line in your estimate entails. And so we just have a very intimate knowledge of the claims process and an intimate knowledge of the insurance landscape in each area that we are acting. In California specifically, like we've all been here for a very long time. I think on this call, we have upwards of 25 years of experience in California. And so that's the difference of being like advocating for yourself versus a public adjuster. There's a lot of, there's a lot you can do advocating for yourself. It doesn't take that long to really get a basic understanding of what you can do for yourself, but it takes weeks, months, years to get an understanding of insurance code, the policy, and the software that is used to communicate with the carrier.
Yeah. Daniel, anything to add to that?
No, I think he pretty much hit all the points. Like he said, it's not that we can do more. It's just that we have more experience and the background. So we know how to navigate and present claims differently than your average, homeowner would or could.
I'm going to say one more thing. One of the main things that I've noticed, even because we have certain clients that are wealthy and simply don't want to do the claim themselves. Like they don't want the hassle of handling the claim. And in those type of situations, it's very similar to people that aren't wealthy and need every penny, is that the emotional tax, like the what it does to your physiology and your body and your mental state of being, having to deal with a claim. Just that alone, not having to do that. Like when we're, as a public adjuster, as soon as we sign the contract and send it to the carrier, in almost every aspect of the claim, like 95% of the communications we can do. And that means that you no longer have the weight and the baggage of needing to keep up with every communication with the carrier. And so that's a massive benefit as well.
Yeah. I would say that the vast majority of people right now that I hear asking for help, and whether it's a public adjuster or just more hands-on, they just need more help. It's because they're starting to get exhausted. Right? Just the process feels a little too overwhelming. It's like another full-time job. They just can't take all the time that it takes to do it well. So last thing that I'll leave is a little bit of a note on that. I wrote a blog post this week for the newsletter that I have on LinkedIn. It's called Dawn Patrol. I'm going to share the screen and just share a section of it where I talk about Tugboat. So the article, it's short, but if anyone wants to read it, it's called Dawn Patrol. It's on LinkedIn. I think if you go to Tugboat's Instagram, you'll find it in the link tree there. But anyways, this article was about us, my cousin Aaron and I, my co-founder, starting Tugboat over 4 years ago, and the journey that we've kind of gone on with that. And I start off the article saying, if we had known how hard it would be to build Tugboat, maybe we would have thought twice about starting it, because it just seemed like such a logical idea. Claims are such a huge problem. We all know it, those of us that work on claims often. And we're adjusters. They're such a struggle for so many people. And if there was some service out there that helped people accomplish that was affordable, why wouldn't they want it? And so it just talks about the struggle of kind of getting it off the ground, getting the first people to use it, getting buy-in, and then highlights us driving across the country to Florida for Hurricane Ian and thinking like, this is it. We're going to a hurricane. Everyone there is going to want Tugboat. They're going to be begging us for it. We'll just put a magnet on our car and that's all it's going to take. And that like 100% wasn't the case. We got a few dozen users there. We knocked on doors for days, found out people didn't have internet. So how could they use our online app? It was rough. We were there for 3 weeks living in this van, which was actually Chris's van, my brother. Thanks for letting us use that. Anyway, so I end this article saying what we thought would have been what we thought would be a launch pad turned into a brutal learning curve. It wasn't enough to have the right idea. We had to become better at helping people see why it mattered. And this is the same challenge that plays out every day for property owners dealing with claims. If they aren't persistent, they'll leave money on the table. If they aren't patient, they'll burn out before they ever see results. The insurance claims process is designed to be frustrating, and only those who stay the course will get what they're truly owed. That's the important part I wanted to read, because I think it ties into the conversation we were just having. As public adjusters like Chris and Danielle are, they're paid to be persistent, right? Like that is the job, is to be professionally, patiently persistent. As homeowners, it can be a challenge too, but I will say this: if you are patiently persistent, it will pay off for your claim one way or another. Most likely it'll pay off because you'll get to a result. Here, I'll throw her out of there. She's gonna come back with an animal or something like that. Just a second.
Animal. I vote baby.
Oh, what was we were guessing as to whether or not you're going to come back with an animal or a baby, Danielle. We weren't sure.
It's the baby, but he's sleeping.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying that if you're a homeowner going through a claim, the reason I just shared that quote was because patient persistence will pay off the vast majority of the time. People that use Tugboat, people that advocate for themselves, people that do it well with an educated voice, with an empowered tone, using the words that will help them get there, will get to a better result. And so it's my encouragement to you, if you're going through one of these wildfire claims, whether it's a total loss or a smoke claim, whatever it is, patient persistence. I know it's hard to hear someone asking you to be patient when you're the one having to live through it. And it's easy for me to say my house isn't one of the ones that burned down. I'm not saying that facetiously in any way. Like, I mean, it's much easier for me to say that than it is for you to live that and do that. But this is me encouraging you that it's worth it. As someone who sees this and helps people through it every day, continue having that patient persistence, and there's a high probability that you'll see positive results from it. So thanks everyone again for joining this week for Office Hours. Chris, Danielle, thanks again as always for being here. Thanks for all the work you guys do at Waypoint, helping people get what they need. We'll be back here again next week, Wednesdays, 3:00 live here on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Drop your questions to us. Last reminder, Tugboat remains free for anyone affected by the wildfires. Tugboat.claims/wildfires or /wildfire, I think is what it is. Tugboat.claims/wildfire. And you'll see the button there to create an account for free. We want to make sure that you get the support you need so that you can settle for more. So we'll see you again next week.